Now, this was originally going to be a very different video. I was prepared to come up here and tell you that the Titan 250D was another cool vehicle but wasted potential. Just another throwaway vehicle with a lifespan that could be counted in frames in actual PvP. Obviously because, you know, this thing kind of had the biggest critical weak spot in an aircraft that's going to be doing nothing if not soaking up ground fire. And then they actually fixed it. Which means that I don't just get to tell you that the Titan 250D is interesting, I get to tell you that it's viable, powerful, extremely fun, and I get to apply all of my wasted time that was spent learning this game and not learning how to talk to girls to teach you how to kill people with it.
May I have this dance?
It is pretty crazy for me to actually be entirely happy about something that was added. Don't get me wrong, we are still in dumpster fire category of this game, but it's also important to remember that Rockstar is not one person. There are different people that work on different things. Whoever worked on the Oscar Guzman Flies Again DLC, they kind of cooked. It's not an insane amount of content, sure, but I'm way more happy to be giving more interesting things in fewer doses than just having a bunch of different cars that cost several $1 million shoved down my fucking throat.
Don't cry, consumer. Take-Two Interactive has enough overpriced dog shit to last till GTA 7. Rockstar, add a $5 million Mazda Miata. The boy's hungry.
And so far, 2 of the 3 aircraft in this DLC are fucking awesome. There's apparently a helicopter that was added called the Iron Mule. I don't know what the fuck that is, but there is the Fentacopter, and the Fentacopter kicks ass because you can pick up cars and throw them at people even harder than before. A lot of people have been complaining that you can't pick up all of the cargo vehicles. You can only pick up most of them. Let me remind you that the point of this game isn't to grind, it's to have fun with the things you grind for. And part of that fun is throwing Chernobyls at people. And, you know, the Duster is, I honestly just don't even think they finished it. Like, they gave it a targeting pod, but it has no missiles, so I swear there is more planned. But at very least, people have kind of taken to it as the new challenge plane, because, well, congratulations, Rockstar, you broke a record. You made the new worst dogfighter in the game. But obviously, what we're worried about here isn't either of those. It's the Titan 250D. And genuinely, this aircraft has some potential to really breathe some life into free mode. This thing isn't just a great vehicle or weapon on its own, it is an invitation to take a dive into combined arms warfare and Grand Theft Auto Online, which I'm pretty sure if I said that sentence to a Victorian child, they would literally turn to dust. But the reality is that having a bunch of vehicles that have to work together in Grand Theft Auto not only is perfect for a game where the main selling point is the vehicles, it's also just extremely fun, okay? I hate individual one-on-one PvP, because all it does is just turn into score play. No. I believe in map dominance. I believe in getting together a bunch of idiots and taking on even bigger groups of idiots, in purging the lobby of them with a combined arms force second only to the Imperium of fucking man. Then I am proud to tell you the Titan 250D is the ultimate flagship to that combined arms force. And without further ado, let's talk about how to use it. First, let's understand some things about outfitting our AC-130. Once you buy it, you're of course going to paint it. Now you can do, sort of a camouflage type of thing to blend in with the environment. You can even black it out for the, Black Cat's World at War LARP. Personally, I made mine matcha colored because I'm a matcha cuckler. You coffee cucklers are too crazy. But moving on to the livery, there's actually something to know here. See, when you put a livery or a countermeasure upgrade on the Titan, the Iron Mule, or the Bombushka, this is what causes there to be an invisible wall where you can't actually drive stuff into the back of them. Please do not whine about this thing to get fixed, because I am very, very scared if they actually try and fuck with this thing anymore, they're going to break the tail again. But moving on to countermeasures, this is one of the only times ever I will actually recommend flares. That is because chaff is generally for when you can open a window of 8 seconds you can't be locked onto and then eliminate that thing that's firing missiles at you. But given that you will be operating in a continuous space where everybody's going to be firing missiles at you, it's kind of useless. Meanwhile, flares will actually mitigate the amount that hit you, so I would recommend them. That's equipping the plane. How do you equip your hardy crew? Now, you might be tempted to pack all of your friends in the back of this thing like a bunch of little sardines and put one person on every gun. What I would actually recommend though is having one pilot and one gunner per AC-130. The 40mm is something you want to keep open for pilot utility, as we'll get into later. And as for the gunner, they'll have their hands plenty full swapping between the 25 and the 105. Where you should put the rest of your guys isn't in the same Titan 250D, but is in potentially more or escort fighters. Given that the built-in weakness of the Titan 250D is a weakness to air targets and slowness, fighters completely perfectly accent that weakness and are basically integral to any successful usage of our little Spectre spooky gunship. So get yourself a fighter, get him a little friend, and roll together as a little pack of aces, a little fleet of sky pirates if you will. Give your flagship a catchy name, wear matching outfits, and make sure you're all listening to the same playlist. And don't worry about that, because I made you a playlist. I actually made you guys 2 playlists. One is for when you're locked in, which is all like game soundtrack, and the other is when you're getting up to more silly mischief, and comms are a huge priority. So with your hardy crew and your hardy jams going, you're ready to take to the skies. Kicking off our silly little guide is the most natural place to start, piloting the Titan 250D. As always, I will advise you to keep your expanded radar always open so you can even tell if a jet is in Polito pointed right at you. You'll also be able to tell if, say, a player is staring at you a little bit too long, and either you do hear a lock-on ping so you know who's going to shoot at you before they do, or you don't hear a lock-on ping, and you can recognize who's about to E-round you. So learn how to assess how many threats and how many hostile players you actually have around you, and also be able to assess if an aircraft is coming after you or some target is too far for you to take down quickly, so you can tell your fighter to go take care of that. Your job is to preserve your ability to glass the entire session and maintain a constant state of suppression on all the people you're fighting, making sure that none of them have the ability to get into vehicles, and anything, whether it be armored or lightly flying, gets immediately obliterated. Now make no mistake, the Titan is one tanky plane, especially in the world of free mode where every fucking plane feels the absolute need to smear themselves across the side of you. But we need to know what tanky really means for aircraft in Grand Theft Auto. It doesn't mean that you can actually take 12 missiles, 35 sniper shots, and 25 railgun shots. It actually means that you can take like 5 at best, and then you'll start smoking, and you'll go into the state of degrading health, and eventually you will die. The game here is mitigation, trying to keep as much damage as you take to a minimum, which comes down to understanding the threats. This can be basically broken down into 2 groups, missiles and direct fire weapons. Understanding missiles really comes down to understanding flares, because you are not going to be dodging a lot of missiles in this thing. Flares are very helpful, but they only really work on low volley missiles. The actual problem is the fact that one use of flare only works on one individual missile. Everything after that will look like it's diverted, and suddenly you'll get ghost missiles slamming you in the behind. That, however, was the simple part. The not simple part is direct fire weapons, E-rounds, and railguns. Again, you are not extremely agile, so you're not exactly evading these shots. This is a game of managing sightlines. Use the terrain, use buildings, terrain mask. Look, this thing handles like a fucking shopping cart, but you're gonna have to become the Dale Earnhardt of shopping carts. A lot of this is essentially just a gambling game. When you're low, you are safe from direct fire weapons, but Mark IIs can take off, helicopters can take off, and you will immediately be in range of their shooting. And when you're high up and out of range of these missiles, you are the biggest target for any ground fire. And so if you're taking away anything from this, it's that to some extent taking damage is somewhat unavoidable, which moves into the second part, being able to recover and get back into the fight quickly. But there's a few things to understand here. First is that this thing does not do well with ground collisions. It is very, very brittle to slamming into things, which means you need to be very, very gentle with how you land.
You've never done this before.
That being said, as a whole, I don't know if I'd ever recommend actually using the hanger, at least any kind of frequently. This is because, of course, this is still Grand Theft Auto, and especially in more chaotic lobbies where a lot's going on, presumably where you'll be operating, the more stuff going on, the more this game breaks, to include getting soft-locked and stuck on black screens while going in and out of properties like hangars. You can also just land, recall your plane, and call it back in. You can even speed up this process by having your gunner call on their plane and just jumping out while you're over it. You'll have plenty of time to call Moore's Mutual while you're getting back in the air. I'd also recommend supplementing this with some form of off the radar so that way people can't see where you are while you're in this vulnerable state. And so to recap, the art of flying this thing is knowing when to tell your fighters to go blow things up and how to cover you, making sure your gunner always has sight lines while also flying around the city as if this is a stunt plane, which it very much isn't, and trying to stay sane while doing all of those things. And if the headache of just piloting this thing wasn't bad enough, next, let's learn about how to work with your gunner. The first part of gunnery is coordination between the pilot and the gunner. You two will need to be in sync to be very effective, but I've got a few pointers to help you out with that. Starting off, when it comes to flying, you want to make sure to always follow a consistent flight pattern. That means if you're using the right rudder, hold on to the right rudder, or the left rudder, hold on to the left rudder. Don't be jittering around, don't be making micro adjustments, because every single adjustment goes straight to the camera and straight to the aim of your gunner, and can throw them off right before they're about to shoot. Beyond that, you might find it a little bit hard during more aggressive maneuvers to generally have an idea of where the plane is oriented. And there are two good ways to get your bearing on where the plane is looking, where the gunner is looking. First is the little camera that the pilot can switch to by holding X, square, or whatever it is on PC. This will immediately give them a perspective of what the gunner can see while still maintaining control of the plane. It is insanely useful. The other part is that, well, the gunner won't really have a good reference for where they're actually looking relative to where the plane is. But what can be a good reference is the fact that the gunner can look up and see the wing. So not only can the gunner use this as a reference for where the plane is pointing, but the pilot can make very simple callouts and just say, hey, just off the wing, shoot right there. Now my final piece of advice comes with how to use the 40mm cannon. Outside of understanding it as a weapon, we also need to understand it as a utility, because whenever you go into the 40mm, the aircraft immediately enters an autopilot state. As long as you have any kind of horizontal momentum, it will fly on a scripted path straight forward. This makes the plane a very, very stable firing platform, and also, this autopilot feature will even work if all of the engines are dead, meaning even if you have no engines and you're just about destroyed, you can still point this thing at either your hangar or the nearest spawn, switch to the 40mm, and the aircraft will fly itself there so you can hop out. And so now that we know how to fly it, and we know how to coordinate, and we know how to make it home, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's talk about how to deal with we're going to want to view free mode from a top-down perspective. Jets, of course, are your kryptonite, and you have two ways of dealing with them. One is with fighters, and two is without. If you do have fighters, generally what you want them to do is, if they can't kill the plane very quickly, force them into a turn fight. Get them in that 1 circle, 2 circle, and form a secret, more sinister 3rd circle, and do AC-130 passes around their little engagement, the pilot working together with the gunner to pepper them with 25s and 40 mils. These will not do a lot of damage to each plane, but they are really, really good at picking them clean of control surfaces. The 105 is very, very hard to hit aircraft with, and it won't instantly kill them as you'll expect, but it will blow off every control surface they have. It is still useful if you want to help out your planes while staying out of range of the enemy planes, given that the other two weapons need to get close. Just make sure not to kill your friends. If you don't have planes to force them into a turn fight, then you're going to need to get really desperate and really, really creative. Pretty much any plane you're dealing with, you want to do it vertically if you can help it. Given that most free mode pilots really just use missiles, if you make it a vertical fight, they literally can't lock onto you, so, that might help a little bit while you're inevitably going to fucking die. The rest of the work is really just doing your absolute best to get them into your gun sight, which sometimes is not as hard as you'd think. For some reason, some pilots in free mode will see a plane with guns on only its left side and decide to fly on the left side. Maybe they're LARPing as the F-22s from Olympus Has Fallen or something. But if you can't just pepper them with the 25 and the 40, which is, you know, technically the most effective, you also still have the 105. It is the most range option, so you have the greatest chance to put a good hit on them and make them fuck off before they're in range. So yeah, dealing with jets is either, hey, go dogfight that guy and I'll essentially gank the fight, or oh my god, we're gonna fucking die. Now taking it a little further down, we can deal with VTOL targets. Helicopters are simple, okay? This is basically hydrogen bomb versus coughing baby. You will vaporize them with the 25 and the 40mm. Honestly, I recommend just making it fun for yourself and using their rotors as a bullseye with the 105, which pretty much applies to just about everything except Mark IIs, because of course they are fucking tiny. In terms of what you can do, this comes down to well-placed 40mm shots, a lot of 25mm shots, and trying to airburst them with the 105 or bounce it off the ground. Oh, holy shit, he hit that. But the real difference that'll be made is your fighters. What they should be doing is basically missile spamming the Mark II. In between that, either they'll be able to shoot them off or land a lucky missile, or you'll be able to pretty easily, eventually, get a shot on. Whenever you take one of these things down, you want to make sure to put a lot of pressure on the player that was using it so that way they can never get back up again, which moves on to our final segment, ground attack. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
1, 2, in other words, you're going to be there, okay?
Simply put, the 25 and the 40, they're a thing. They sure exist. Those are the guns of all time when it comes to killing things on the ground. But all it really comes down to is the 40 is good for like extra damage if the pilot wants to hop in for the slaughter, and the 25 is good for saturation damage on armored targets. Everything else, 105. Look, no matter what, you're gonna learn to 105. Look, Lynn, look, here's the thing. Like most of the newer players in this game, they're like, yay, they gave us the whale gun. Now planes aren't a threat to us anymore. No, look, here's the thing. The railgun makes you a threat to me, okay? And if you ever back me into a corner, or if I have to defend myself, if you're coming at me with a cargo vehicle, it's 2 a.m., I'm in your grinding lobby.
It's a self-defense situation.
Kidding. I don't like blowing up cargo. But there has been this huge growth in this playstyle where people literally just exist in Imani cars and night sharks and railgun and e-snipe their way through every lobby. And basically between that and throwing sticky bombs, they can get easy kills off of everything in the game in a very risk-free way. I don't know where it came from, but personally I blame TikTok. Either way, it's fucking annoying because you have a lot of players taking advantage of the fact that now there's not a laser and a hydra to punish them, and then they run away in their extremely fast car that can't be locked onto, and then they go hide in a garage and brag about how they're up on you. But if they pull that shit on an AC-130, the simple solution is a Halo 2 noob combo shake and bake sort of thing where you alternate between the 105 and the 25. The 105 doesn't do a lot of damage, but it does an incredible shockwave, and then you can easily follow up with the 25mm, which does an insane amount of DPS when concentrated. It is a beautiful thing. We're doing the laser and the hydra's job, but in a more elegant and well-balanced manner. Alright, I do love me some well-regulated hyperviolence. Any ground vehicle that isn't the Imani car or a Night Shark is pretty easy to take care of with just the 105, although the 25 really helps with extremely armored targets like MOCs or tanks, which just leaves the last thing, infantry. See, thankfully in their bravado, a lot of little low levels that try and take pot shots at you neglect to remember that all of their weapons have very visible tracers, and hint hint, the railgun and the 105 have the exact same range. Do with that information what you will. And beyond them calling an airstrike on themselves with the tracer, you don't even need that tracer to tell where they are. All you really need is a general map approximation and maybe their area code, and you will find out how terrifyingly good this thing is at killing people you can't even physically see. And you can even get into a pleasant loop of it. And we in the GTA business call this farming. Now it is very mean, but the reality is that, well, the vote kick system is broken and flawed, and people in this game respawn infinitely. And so this means that the actual most reliable way to make sure someone's not going to be bothering you or anybody else in the lobby is to keep killing them over and over until they decide to leave the lobby. Yeah, it is a little fucked, but it's what the AC-130 is good at, and it is an integral part of how free mode generally works. And so, in Ensemble, 105 pretty much everything except armored targets, which you can use the 25 with to make the process a little bit faster. And behold, you now have air-to-ground basically mastered. And now that we've got the Titan 250D all but mastered, let's take a little bonus section to learn about that integral part of this puzzle. The thing I keep mentioning, and probably the most fun you'll ever have in a small aircraft in GTA Online, let's learn how to be an escort fighter. Being an escort fighter is all about being proactive to deal with the threats that could kill your Titan. Don't get all cozy and fly in formation and make yourself part of the target. Instead, you should be everywhere the Titan can't be, moving at high speed and intercepting every single threat, be it air or ground. First, you are an extended sensor of the Titan. Off the radar is a very frequent problem in GTA Online, but what you can do to help is fly around with your lock-on missiles out. That way, even if something's off the radar, you will lock onto it, and you're basically scanning around for any unseen threats anytime people are off the radar. In terms of dealing with those threats, the missiles themselves are also going to be extremely useful here. Whether or not you can put down the threat quickly, you always want to be missile spamming anything, especially aircraft. That way, if they decide to make a beeline for your Titan, the missiles will kill them, and so it'll force them to actually have to turn around and engage with you. And it'll also force VTOL threats to get into dodge loops and have to deal with you, making them easy pickings for the Titan once it reorients. You very much want to be putting yourself in between your AC-130 and anything that's locking onto it, disrupting the enemy lock-on. If you want to take it an even further step, you can equip flares to your fighter, because flares aren't just bound to the plane they're shot from, they're a real environmental object, and you can flare missiles that are going after friendly aircraft. And one more thing the escort fighter can make use of, if you have the available slots, is the CEO or Motorcycle Club Flight Formation Assist. Now the health buff doesn't work, which in the world of Raijus is probably a good thing. However, the speed boost does work. This means that using the Flight Formation Assist, a fighter can tow an AC-130 and its CEO and bring it up to its own speed, drastically helping with your ability to get the AC-130 from one place to another. So deal with long-range surface threats like Chernobogs and AA trailers, missile spam Mark II, and shoot down any silly goober who decides to get between you and your mothership. And ladies and gentlemen, you have just about figured out at least the basics of combined arms aerial warfare in GTA Online. So, closing thoughts. Well, from a strictly balance point of view, it is something that was very much needed, a reliable ground attack vehicle that won't get vaporized by the railgun. At the same time, that 105 is insane, and you're not going to be able to deal with a Titan on foot with anything but a railgun, so it's kind of a power creep equilibrium. I could see the 105 at least having its radius nerfed, but I would never say that's a good idea until you have fixed the railgun and E-sniper. And at the same time, the social aspect is also the balancing factor. I mean, you really do need an escort fighter to make this thing work, so that's 2 to 3 people. Meaning if it's 2 to 3 people attacking one guy, well of course the 3 guys should have the advantage, and it's much better balanced than the laser, which gave all of the AC-130's capability to one individual, with still about 3 times the firepower. I think trying to incentivize people to group up and team up to bring out real firepower from the sandbox is probably something that would really cut down on griefing. I mean, I'm only half joking when I say that one of the biggest reasons the Titan 250D won't become a griefing tool is because it requires friends to use. So the lesson you should take from the Titan 250D is truly that this game is best experienced on a social basis. So get together with your friends, go into free mode and fuck around in big groups, dominate the lobby, or just screw the hell around. Even if the development has taken a bit of a step away from it, this is still a game that at its roots is a social experience and is best enjoyed that way. And that is what I want you to take away from the Titan 250D. Thank you for watching. Thank you to everyone who helped make this video, and thank you especially to those that were blown up in the making of this video. Your sacrifices did not go in vain. You guys have good ones, wonderful nights, wonderful days, keep it real, and I will catch you gators laters.